My dad kicked me out on my 18th birthday with $50 and said I'd come crawling back. He just did instead. Hi, I'm Arthur, 31. And the last words my father ever said to me were, "You'll come crawling back." That was 7 years ago. Today, he sat in my company's waiting room in a 10-year-old parka, flipping through a magazine he couldn't afford to subscribe to, while the son he kicked out at 18 prepared to decide whether his golden child daughter deserved a job. It was a Tuesday in February. I remember because the wind off Lake Erie made it feel like my ears might fall off. I was barefoot. Socks only. Both heels threadbare. My birthday gift from Richard Caldwell, biological father, household tyrant, was a trash bag full of clothes and exactly $50 in cash. "Happy birthday," he said. "Now get the hell out." My mom cried but didn't stop him. That was the worst part. You think the betrayal is the yelling, the shoving, the slamming of doors. But it's not. It's when the one person who swore they'd always protect you chooses not to. Silently. With downcast eyes and a flinch when you reach for help. The whole blow-up started over college. I'd been accepted to Ohio State. Partial scholarship. Worked 2 jobs since I was 15. Just needed help with the gap, room and board. Less than they spent on Madison's last sorority semester. Dad stood there, blocking the doorway like a wall, beer in one hand, fury in the other. "You want a handout," he said. "You always want a damn handout." Madison, leaning over the banister in a hoodie that probably cost more than my laptop, chimed in. "Maybe he can sleep in the garage." Dad smiled like it was Christmas morning. "Garage? Hell no. Let him sleep in the street." The porch light clicked off. The door locked. And that was that. I walked 10 miles in the cold to the Greyhound station. Bought a one-way ticket to Columbus with that $50. Spent the rest on a motel room that reeked of bleach and sadness. Slept with one eye open, one hand on my bag, and made myself a promise I never broke. You will not come crawling back. You will come back standing so tall they won't recognize you. I didn't sleep much that first year. Or eat. Or stop. Columbus was war. I wasn't living. I was surviving with a cracked ThinkPad, a stolen Wi-Fi signal, and a brain nobody believed in. I washed dishes at a diner called The Fork, where the owner, Ray, was a felon with a bad back and a soft spot for kids who didn't flinch when the freezer door slammed. He let me sleep on the storeroom floor. Gave me produce to sort at 4 a.m., and leftover fries for dinner. I showered at Planet Fitness and kept a toothbrush in my back pocket. When my shoes got stolen off my feet at the bus station, I duct taped 2 plastic bags together and walked 6 blocks in rain. I didn't cry. I coded. The library let me stay all day if I didn't snore when I nodded off. I'd plug in my laptop, open a blank screen, and build. I taught myself 5 languages. Wrote script after script until my knuckles ached. My first app was a disaster. My second one crashed every time you scrolled too fast. But my third, Rail, was different. It tracked microtransactions from mobile vendors, food trucks, pop-ups, little booths that couldn't afford the big names. It was ugly, but it worked. Within 6 months, 5 trucks in Columbus were using it. Then a guy in Cleveland demoed it at a local expo. Someone from Austin saw it. Next thing I know, I'm on a 2 a.m. Zoom with a VC named Jordan Lowe who said, "You're rough as hell, but this is the most scalable thing I've seen in a year." He wired me $60,000 that week. I cried in a Chipotle bathroom stall because someone finally believed in me more than my family ever had. I got on a bus to Austin with a duffel bag, my patched-up winter coat, and no plan but don't stop. Payrail exploded before I could catch my breath. I barely had an office, just a co-working space that smelled like ramen and desperation. But the moment we launched version 1.0, every vendor from South Congress to East 6th wanted in. Then the seed round came. $2 million. Suddenly I wasn't just surviving. I was running something real. I had a payroll. A team. Deadlines that didn't involve panicking about canned soup. The founders I partnered with were smart, but they underestimated how hard I'd worked to get here. They treated me like a junior. A mascot. Until the first revenue report landed and the numbers punched through their ceilings. I made a move. Took controlling interest. Told them I wouldn't sign the buyout unless my name was on the ownership papers in bold. They balked. Then checked the books again. Then agreed. By 25, I owned the majority share of a company now worth $800 million. We moved into a high-rise office downtown with a view of the river and furniture I didn't have to assemble myself. I upgraded my laptop, my shoes, my life. And then, like the final boss in a video game you thought you'd already beaten, Madison Caldwell applied for a job. Executive assistant to the CEO. $98,000 a year. Her resume was a masterpiece of corporate fluff. Experienced in suite-level operations. Excellent communicator with a passion for efficiency. But it was her name that froze me. Madison. No longer Caldwell. She dropped the name like it was a fashion faux pas, but I knew that voice. That smile. That same fake cookie tone she used when she was 12 and asking Dad for a weekend in Miami because everyone else's parents said yes. I told HR to schedule her first thing Tuesday. I also told them not to let the man in the lobby, Richard Caldwell, see anyone until I said so. Tuesday. 9 a.m. Madison walked in wearing heels that screamed consultant money and a blazer sharp enough to slice drywall. She looked like the cover of a lifestyle mag, except for the hair. Too blonde, too fried. She didn't recognize me. Not until Maya, my chief of staff, said, "This is Arthur Caldwell, founder and CEO." And then Madison froze. Portfolios slipped. Pages scattered. She didn't bend to pick them up. She couldn't. I didn't help. "Sit," I said. She did. Slowly. Like she'd stepped into a dream that suddenly wasn't going her way. I waited a beat, then started the way Dad always did when he wanted to humiliate someone at the Jeep plant. "Let's begin with your greatest weakness." Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I leaned forward. "I'll go first. Mine used to be believing my father when he said I'd never amount to anything." Her lips trembled. A tear broke loose. She didn't wipe it away. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know this was your company." "Yes, you did," I said. "You saw the name on the offer letter. You just didn't think the kid holding a trash bag on the porch could become this." Outside the office, the buzzer sounded. Maya's voice. "Mr. Caldwell, your father is still in the lobby. He says it's urgent." I smiled slightly. "Tell him I'm in a meeting. He can keep reading Texas Monthly until the ink rubs off on his fingers." I turned back to Madison. "Remember when I asked for a $300 laptop at Christmas?" She nodded. "Barely. Dad said if I wanted one, I could build it from parts. Like a real man. Then bought you a $2,000 MacBook because your sociology professor required Final Cut Pro. I used it for TikToks." She whispered. "I know," I said. Her shoulders caved like someone let the air out of her spine. I opened my drawer and slid out a thick acrylic block. Inside, sealed like a museum relic, were two 20s and a 10. The original $50. "This," I said, tapping the glass, "is what your father decided I was worth." And then the door slammed open. Richard Caldwell walked in like he still owned every room he stepped into. He didn't. Not anymore. He froze. For a full second, Richard Caldwell, Jeep lifer, king of beer-fueled opinions, the man who used to swing a belt like it was punctuation, just stood there, trying to process the fact that the boy he threw out now sat behind a desk bigger than his living room. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "Close the door," I said without looking up. He did. Like it was instinct. Like that command hit a part of him that remembered being in charge of nothing. He didn't sit. Of course not. He only ever sat to judge or rest his feet. Madison tried to rise. "Dad, Sit down," I said. She sat. Dad went full bluster. "Look, I don't know what kind of stunt this is, but your sister needs." I held up a hand. "This isn't about Madison's needs. It's about what she's qualified to do. And right now, the only thing she's qualified for is remembering exactly who threw me into the cold." His face darkened like a car hood left out in July. "You little." I raised one finger. Security was already in the doorway before he could finish the sentence. Two of them. Ex-Rangers in tailored suits. "Richard," I said, voice calm as a surgeon, "you are going to do something you've never done. You are going to listen." He didn't move. Not a word. I stood up, slow and deliberate. 7 years ago," I said, "you called me a leech. You said I'd end up in jail or dead. You said Madison was the investment, and I was the write-off." I walked around the desk, eyes level with his. "Well, congratulations. Your investment is unemployed. And your write-off? He's about to take this company public at a valuation that could buy your entire plant 10 times over. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Not even a curse. I turned to Madison. You start Monday. $98,000 a year. Full medical, dental, vision. The insulin pump Dad needs? Covered. That's what real benefits look like. She gasped. A mix of shame and disbelief. I looked back at the man who told me I wasn't worth a coat in winter. You get nothing, I said. Not a phone call. Not a card. Not an invitation to the IPO party. His hands began to shake. For the first time in my life, I saw what fear looked like on Richard Caldwell's face. I pulled out my phone. Opened the banking app. Tapped a button. There, I said. Check your account. That was queued up last night. $250,000. Pays off the house. Covers the second mortgage you took to float Madison's last semester after she flunked Intro to Econ. Leaves just enough for a used SUV. Something reliable. Not flashy. Richard blinked. His phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. He fumbled for it like it was slipping away. When he read the balance update, his knees buckled. He grabbed the back of Madison's chair to stay upright. You didn't have to. He started. I cut him off. It's a gift. With one condition. You never contact me again. Not on holidays. Not when you're drunk. Not if your furnace breaks. If you call, text, show up, or even like a photo on Madison's Instagram, I reverse the transfer and sue for harassment. He stared at the phone. Stared at me. I was wrong, he rasped. I was scared, and I was wrong. I met his eyes dead on. You weren't scared. You were cruel. There's a difference. Then I nodded to security. Escort Mr. Caldwell to the elevator. He's leaving. They moved. He didn't resist. Didn't shout. Just looked at me like I was a ghost that suddenly learned how to hit back. At the door, he paused. Turned like he might say something that mattered. But all he managed was a whisper of my name, like it hurt to say it. Then the door shut behind him. I turned to Madison. She was silent. Eyes red. Lip trembling. I handed her a tissue. You'll hang the framed 50 on your desk. Right where every visitor can see it. You'll book my travel, manage my calendar, and sit in every company meeting where we announce new rounds of funding. She nodded, mascara dripping in quiet rivers. One more thing, I added. Every December, you'll write a check. $10,000. To the Toledo Area Ministries Shelter. Her mouth opened, confused. That's where I slept the night after you laughed on the stairs, I said. You'll sign the check, Madison Caldwell. Not Avery. So they know exactly whose daughter is paying it forward. She whispered. Okay. I nodded once. Welcome to the team. Take the rest of the day. Be ready Monday. She left without a word. That night, I stood on my balcony overlooking Lady Bird Lake, the skyline a crown of lights blinking in the December dark. My phone lit up again and again. Mom. Dad. Madison. Unknown numbers from 419 area codes. I silenced them all. Some debts you pay in money. Some you pay in silence. And some? You let compound interest until it swallows their peace whole. I walked back inside, past the shelf where the $50 sat in its acrylic case. Next to it now, a photo, me, outside the Sunrise Diner in Columbus, wearing that duct-taped coat and holding a styrofoam coffee Ray had given me after a double shift. I'd framed it like a war medal. Because it was. That coat still hangs in my closet. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder of every night I thought I might not make it. Sorry, not hiring. Every winter morning I scrape frost off a cracked windshield with a gift card I never used. And now the boy they abandoned owns the building they used to dream of working in. I pay for 10 full scholarships to Ohio State every year. No names, no handshakes. Just one rule, 4 kids who don't have a backup plan. I show up at the shelter every Christmas Eve. Quiet. No press. Just me and a truckload of coats and hot food. And payroll? We're weeks from IPO. The valuation hit $3 billion on the last round. I still haven't taken a full vacation. I don't care about yachts or legacy. I care about the interns we promote to leads. The dev who cried when I doubled her salary. The janitor who got equity. I told myself I'd never come crawling back. And I didn't. I came back with keys. I came back with power. I came back so they know. The son they thought was disposable became the future they never saw coming. IPO day. The morning buzzed with camera crews, suits I barely recognized, and media people trying to coach me on how to smile like a man who forgot what hunger felt like. I hadn't. I never would. Madison hovered outside my office, clipboard in hand, expression tight. She hadn't spoken much since starting. Just did the work, on time, no attitude, no excuses. She never once asked for special treatment. Maybe she finally understood that this office ran on output, not family discounts. You have 10 minutes before the live stream, she said, voice steady but quiet. I nodded. You doing okay? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. I studied her. She still wore the same perfume. Still carried herself like a princess whose crown got repossessed. But she was here. Not coasting. Not pretending. Just here, doing the work. It was a start. Take a seat, I said. This one's important. She blinked but sat. I pulled out a second acrylic block. This one held a check. 10,000, made out to Toledo Area Ministries, dated that morning, signed. Madison Caldwell. I slid it across the desk. You didn't think I'd forget, she said, voice breaking. No, I said. But I had to be sure. She wiped a tear and stood. You want coffee before the floor call? No, I said, standing too. I want you to walk with me. We stepped into the elevator. 2 executives joined us, whispering about share splits and market open timing. Madison stood silently next to me. As the elevator climbed, I looked at her through the reflection in the mirror doors. You know what today is? IPO day, she whispered. No, I said. Today is the day I become the man Dad said I'd never be. She looked up. Arthur, I raised a hand. We're not doing speeches. We're doing clarity. The doors slid open to applause, cameras, and a boardroom filled with people who thought this story started with code. It didn't. It started with frostbitten feet. With ketchup soup. With a father who thought cruelty was discipline and a sister who thought silence was safety. And now, the boy in socks was about to ring the opening bell on a company worth more than their entire street. Not for revenge. For closure. The bell rang. The confetti fell. And just like that, Payrail was public. The floor cheered. My phone lit up like it had swallowed a fireworks display. Journalists wanted sound bites. Investors wanted handshakes. My team? They wanted to celebrate. And they deserved it. Every single one of them. But I didn't stay. I slipped out the back exit of the exchange, pulled a hoodie over my head, and took the first car service to the airport. No press run. No after party. Just a one-way ticket to Ohio under the name A. Rowe, my mother's maiden name, back before she stopped calling. I landed in Toledo after midnight. No parade. No headlines. Just me, the cold, and a walk through streets that once treated me like debris. I passed the old house. The porch light was off. Curtains drawn. New owners. No memory of the kid who stood barefoot out there on his 18th birthday, holding $50 and a bag of dreams no one bothered to believe in. I kept walking. All the way to the shelter. The same one that let me sleep by the vending machines when I was too ashamed to ask for help. I walked in with 3 duffels, new sleeping bags, prepaid phones, and 20 grand in gift cards. The man at the front desk, maybe 10 years younger than me, didn't recognize me. He just said, "Name?" I smiled. "Arthur. Just Arthur." He nodded, scribbled it down, and buzzed me through. I stayed until sunrise. Served eggs. Wiped tables. Played chess with a guy named Ronnie who beat me in 5 moves and didn't gloat. Said I was rusty. Before I left, I slipped an envelope into the office safe. It held another check, $250,000 this time, with a handwritten note that said, "For the ones nobody bets on." I was one of them once. Back in Austin that night, I stood in my condo's kitchen eating leftover Thai food out of the carton. My phone buzzed with stock price updates. I ignored them. Instead, I pinned something new to the corkboard next to the acrylic $50. A photo of Ronnie, smiling with that chipped tooth, flashing a peace sign. It wasn't just a victory lap anymore. It was a map. For anyone who ever heard, "You won't make it." I did. 3 weeks after the IPO, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. An actual letter. Cream envelope. Slanted cursive. Return address, Caldwell, Madison. I opened it over coffee, assuming it was another apology, or maybe a resignation. It wasn't. Inside was a photograph. Not glossy. Not filtered. Just a plain 4x6 print of our parents' old driveway, now cracked, the Jeep plant sticker on the mailbox peeling. And sitting on the front step, wearing an old denim jacket I hadn't seen in over a decade, was Madison. No makeup. No filters. Just her, holding the framed $50 in her lap like it was something sacred. On the back, in small writing. I didn't understand back then. But I do now. I hope it's not too late to keep learning. That morning, I called my assistant. Reschedule my afternoon, I said. Then I called Madison. Bring the $50. I told her. We're going for a drive. She didn't ask where. I took her to the old library in Columbus. The one where I used to code until security kicked me out. We sat on the same bench where I ate cold fries with Ray and mapped out version 1 of Payrail on a receipt. I handed her a laptop. Your onboarding's over. I'm putting you on a real project. She stared at the screen. Then up at me. I don't want charity, Arthur. This isn't charity, I said. It's consequence. Of your choices. Good ones this time. She smiled, real and small. We didn't talk much after that. But she got to work. And for the first time in my life, my sister didn't feel like a storm I had to survive. She felt like a partner. 6 months later, I found myself back in the city council chamber in downtown Austin. Only this time, I wasn't petitioning for a sidewalk permit or zoning clearance. This time, I was the keynote. Arthur Caldwell, founder and CEO of Payrail. The event host announced, and I stepped up to the podium in a tailored jacket that cost more than my first 6 months of rent combined. Except I didn't feel like the guy in that jacket. I still felt like the kid in the Planet Fitness showers, counting quarters for laundry. The room was packed with donors, developers, and city officials pretending to sip coffee while actually waiting to see who I'd back in the next election. I didn't care about that. I was there because I just signed a deal to fund a new tech training center for underserved youth, right where the old library used to stand. And I wanted to speak plain. This city gave me nothing but a second chance, I told them. So I'm building a place for the next kid no one believes in. Murmurs. Some polite nods. One guy near the back actually wiped his eyes. Maybe allergies. Afterward, a tall woman in a UT blazer approached me, said her students were obsessed with rail and asked if I'd consider speaking at the engineering school. I gave her my card. As I turned to leave, I saw Madison standing by the back wall, holding 2 coffees and a folder tucked under one arm. She smiled. Not the practiced one. The real one. Was that your I'm not bitter speech? She asked. No, I said, taking the coffee. That's next year. We walked out into the bright Texas sun. My phone buzzed with another Forbes request, a podcast interview, a dozen people who wanted a piece of the comeback story. But I wasn't chasing headlines anymore. Now I was building the kind of world where kids like me didn't have to burn their past to earn a future. A year to the day after the IPO, I stood in my office staring at the framed $50 bill one last time. Below it, I'd added a plaque. Initial investment. Madison knocked, stepped in holding 2 glasses of bourbon. Real stuff this time. A quiet toast. To surviving? She asked. I shook my head. To outgrowing. We clinked. Down below, the new interns were laughing near the espresso machine. One of them wore a coat patched at the elbows. I'd seen it before, my coat. Madison must have grabbed it from the closet and donated it without asking. I didn't mind. That coat had served its time. Madison handed me a small box. Inside, a pen. Classic. Silver. Engraved with one word. Rewrite. I met her eyes. I figured, she said. You've earned the right. I smiled. For once, without weight behind it. Then I picked up the pen. Because I wasn't just building now. I was editing the whole damn story. That night, I drove back to where it all began. Not the house. That's so long ago, foreclosed, gutted, repainted into someone else's memory. I went to the porch. The porch where I stood barefoot at 18, holding a trash bag and a future nobody wanted. It was colder than I remembered. But I didn't shiver. I sat on the curb. Pulled the old ThinkPad out of my bag, the same one I'd kept, duct tape and burn marks and all. The startup graveyard inside it could fill a museum. Rail version 0. One still opened if you typed the right command. I ran it once, just for me. Just to remember. Then I powered it down. Closed the lid. Left it on the porch. A monument. A warning. A thank you. In the rear view, the porch light flicked on. Maybe a sensor. Maybe something else. Back in Austin, I walked through my apartment barefoot, just to remind myself that I could. The carpet was soft. The air warm. The silence didn't hurt. On my kitchen counter, a letter from Ohio State waited. The scholarship fund I'd set up now carried my name. They wanted to do a ceremony. Hang a portrait. I sent them a different idea. A wall. Covered in names. Not mine. Theirs. Every kid who ever got kicked out with $50 and made it anyway. Every kid who never came crawling back, because they came back standing. And stayed that way.